Welcome to the episode 2 of Akudaaya, the interesting story of Yemi and Folake, the mysterious woman who had died and somehow reincarnated back to life. And now she's trying to entangle Yemi's life with love. Yemi still couldn't believe that he had actually just proposed to such a woman. How would he spend the rest of his life with a woman that has died and reincarnated? It was just unthinkable. Folake understood the whole drama going up in Yemi's head. She took a calm and promised him that she was going to explain the entire situation, and she would explain it from the very beginning. And this is precisely the story of how she died and reincarnated. The people of Akudaaya longed for a king more than they longed for gold and silver. The village has an unforgettable landmark which has and would forever remain remarkable in the history of the Yoruba people. In the realm of culture, the people of Akudaaya lived in absolute peace with one another. Oba Adegoroye, their most recent king, had implemented some laws of love which invariably led to the people tolerating one another, irrespective of their background. Before King Adegoroye gave up the ghost, it pleaded with the gods to bless him with a male child, whom, according to tradition, would continue his legacy. But the gods, in their own wisdom, had denied him of his desire until death finally claimed him from the land of the living. 40 days after Oba Adegoroye's death, the elders of Akudaaya converged in the palace and inquired from the gods through the deep knowledge of the chief priest, whose household should take over the throne since the late king had no crowned prince before his journey to the land of the dead. Despite his deep knowledge in the matters of spiritual things, the answer the chief priest got from the gods was absolutely unclear. The gods say the crown and staff of Akudaaya should not be moved from the household of Oba Adegoroye. The priest declared, frowning confusingly at the Ifa which laid still on the ground, dictating the fate of the entire village. Whenever something crucial was up, the first thing the people of Akudaaya did was to consult the gods through the chief priest. The chief priest in turn inquires from Ifa. Ifa was a deity which was physically the aspect of the gods. Only the chief priest could communicate to the invisible gods through the visible Ifa. Ifa, represented by white linen and several small pebbles, or in some cases, the okwele. And whatever the Ifa said was final, otherwise, there would be chaos in the village. That is how it had been, and the people of Akudaaya loved it that way, never intending to change it. The late king had no heir. Why then should the crown and the staff not be moved from his household? The confusion was glaring enough, judging by the look on the faces of the elders. Even the chief priest was looking so seriously confused. But the king had a daughter. Yes, he had a beautiful, smart and intelligent damsel. Princess Folake Adegoroye was the only daughter of the late king Adegoroye. Her mother, Queen Ajara of Akudaaya, had been the king's sole companion since he began his reign. Does that mean that Folake's husband, whoever it would become the next king of our land? One of the elders asked, clearly confused. The priest shrugged and shook his head. I do not know. But what I do know is that the gods know what we do not know. That is what the gods are saying. Another man rightly put. Or what else do you expect? And what if our king of yesterday had a son somewhere which we do not know about? The first man suggested. That made the elders to collectively think deeper. For the fact that the gods knew too many unnecessary and necessary details. They probably knew if the king had a son somewhere, and that son would come back someday to become a king over them. When he would come back was something the elders could not predict, and the gods had refused to give them a clue as well. And on this day, 6 years had passed since death took Oba Adegoroye to meet with his ancestors. And the people of Kajola, particularly the elders, were still waiting in anticipation for the glorious arrival of the king's imaginary son. Princess Folake, on the other hand, was already 26 and hadn't been able to point out a man to crown her. The gods, for 6 years now, hadn't said anything that would give the people a clue about what to do to have a king over them. Once had the gods spoken, and for 6 years, it had not been established. Princess Folake Adegoroye majestically stepped out of the palace. In a matter of hours, she would be in Lagos. Lagos. She'd heard a lot about the city, most of which were discouraging, yet would want to have a taste and experience of it. And today, for Princess Folake, Lagos would no longer be a story. It would be a reality. She was sure of that. She smoothed her hair with her fingers and wondered in silence if this Lagos was actually more civilized than the town she lived in Ife. Have you carried the tubers of yam I asked you to deliver to Kunle's wife? Queen Ajara asked as she too stepped out of the palace. Yes, mommy, Folake answered. How about the potatoes? I've packaged everything, mother, Folake said, feeling anxious. The city had somehow locked her in a pot of taste, making her crave for its experience. She honestly couldn't wait to know what was so special about this famous city called Lagos. After several hugs and prayers and eulogy, the queen ordered 3 of the palace maids to help the princess with her bags and escort her down to the garage, where she would board a bus to a city in Ife. From there, she would get a bus going to Lagos. Folake got to Erioke garage with her escort of maids carrying bags. She was dressed in a simple Ankara, which would give absolutely no clue that she was a princess. But her maids were dressed in such a way that would make the world think she was Queen Elizabeth of England. She could have decided to travel in a royalty style by using one of her father's cars. But Folake was the simple kind. Being comfortable in luxury wasn't her thing. Erioke garage was bubbling with morning cacophony as the commercial transport workers hustled to make ends meet. A rough young boy in probably his late teens or early 20s approached Folake. Where you dey go, ma? Lagos? Yes, Lagos, Folake replied. Come. He collected a bag from one of the maids and led them to a white urban bus. Clearly, the bus destination was Ojota in Lagos. And according to the boy, Folake was supposed to be the last passenger to make the bus a full load. He carried the rest of the bags and arranged them properly, telling Folake to make herself comfortable on the last space reserved for the last passenger in the bus. After grumbling for 1 or 2 minutes about how uncomfortable the space would be, Folake stepped in and managed to make herself comfortable on the reserved seat. She gave the maids a token and responded in delight to their farewell. But no one in the bus seemed to have observed her prestige, which was exactly what she'd wanted. When the driver entered to take off, he realized that the man who was sitting at the front seat was no longer in the bus. Eja, the driver called out to the rough young garage worker. Where this man wey dey sit for here? I don't know, Eja replied. The driver immediately went back down and looked around if peradventure he might find the man. He ordered Eja to shadow another passenger to replace the unfound man so as to leave on time. When Folake knew that she wasn't actually the last passenger, she took the liberty of the opportunity by changing her position and moving to the front seat. It was obvious that the next comfortable person in a commercial bus next to the driver was the person sitting next to the driver. It wasn't up to 5 minutes when Eja came back with another passenger. He was about sliding the door when the man that had suddenly disappeared came rushing. He headed straight for the front door where he presumed was his space. "Madam, I'm sorry," he tried to be polite, "but I'm supposed to be sitting down here." Folake stared at him and then at Eja. "Do you expect me to go down for you?" She shook her head slowly and silently shifted her stairs to the driver. Eja was supposed to be talking. Instead, he kept quiet and just stared at the man. The driver ignited the engine and brought the bus alive. He raised the engine continuously and neglected the man with his commotion. "Madam, do you understand me?" the man pushed. "You are sitting in my space." "But I didn't meet you here," Folake responded. Aggravated, the man turned to Eja. "Oga, tell this woman make she come out from my seat now. Now wetin be all this nonsense?" "Now where you save waka go?" Eja asked, somehow putting the blame on the man. The man inched back. "Na banana I go buy now, make I no buy something again." He raised his voice. "Oga, no shout for me oh." Eja stormed back. "Go enter another bus abeg." "You mean I've just been sitting down here wasting my time since morning? For God's sake, I'm the first passenger in this bus." He faced the driver. "Oga driver, now wetin be all this thing now?" The driver slowly leaned towards Folake. "Madam, you go fit enter another bus make this man enter?" Folake quickly shook her head. "No," she replied. "Me sef I dey rush." The driver turned towards the man. "Oga, no vex o, abeg join the next bus." He gripped the steering, pushed the throttle and zoomed out of Henrioke garage. The man stood dumb, watching as the bus zoomed its way to Lagos. Folake sighed and shook her head in bitterness. She was now sitting on the bed. Yemi was still at the same spot he'd been 30 minutes ago. The sweat on his body had amazingly dried up. He couldn't understand how he was able to bear the heaviness of the moment. The lady had taken him all the way back to her village and was presently narrating how she had come to Lagos. One thing that had been alluring in her story so far was the fact that she was a princess. But the horrifying thing, according to her, was that she was an Akudaaya, a part of the story Yemi hadn't fully understood. If I had known what lay ahead of me that day, I would have stepped down for that man to enter. Folake closed her eyes briefly as if to collect the memory of the event that had claimed her life. But fate has its way of doing things. She arose and paced slowly in parallel to the bed. We had not gone too far when I observed the driver wrestling with the brake. The driver lost complete control of the bus, which led to the most fatal accident for that day. Yemi's mouth was the next thing that went wide in his body. This lady's story was gradually becoming a tragedy. All I could remember was that I was shouting, screaming for help. Folake continued. And then I found myself standing on the road where our bus somersaulted. I didn't know how it happened. I just saw myself standing there, completely unharmed. She sighed again and sat back down on the bed. Yemi sat still, clearly in suspense. He was completely soaked in the story. Tears streaked down Folake's eyes. Few minutes after the accident, people gathered at the scene and were bringing out lifeless bodies from the vehicle. She continued the story. I moved closer, searching the faces of the bodies, at the same time wondering how I had managed to escape such a fatal accident. She closed her eyes again as tears streamed down. Yemi could surmise the rest of the story, but he let out all the predictions in his mind. His heart couldn't bear all what his mind was presenting as the rest of the story. He wanted Folake to eat the hammer on the nail herself. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw my body being carried out of the bus. I screamed and shouted and started calling out to people to explain to me what was happening. But in all my effort, I discovered that no one could hear or see me. I tried to touch someone and all I could feel was nothing. Absolutely nothing. That was when I realized that I am a living dead. An Akudaaya. The story continues in the next episode. What happened to Yemi next? What happened to Folake next? Are their two tragic stories able to merge? Please continue with the story. And yes, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell. These little things have a way of encouraging us to do more and to bring more African folk tales to you. Thank you so much for following the story so far. We hope that you have enjoyed it and that we have been able to add value to you. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode. Gracious.